Are you tired of media servers that collect your data, potentially outing your addiction to watching Sleepless in Seattle on repeat? Have you had enough of random ads that make absolutely no sense?
That's not true. Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
Introducing Jellyfin, the lucid-loving, library-liberating, media-managing machine made to serve you. Your content on your terms privately. Alright, fun aside, let's get serious. Jellyfin is the completely free, open source alternative to Plex and Emby. In this series, I'll show you how to set it up, integrate Jellyseerr, and make the ultimate private media server. A heavily requested one for all of you guys out there wanting to look at Jellyfin as your media server, or you want to know more about it, how to set it up and get going, this is the video for you. So today, hopefully we can show you why you'd want to use Jellyfin, the differences between Jellyfin and some of our other media servers out there like Plex and Emby. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. Alright guys, so here we are on our Unraid server. Now we are using Unraid, however you can follow along as well if you're using Docker. The installation steps will be similar. When you're using Docker, we can just use the same mappings into a Docker Compose file, and they're heavily advertised online, so we're not going to have to rehash the same thing over and over again. Most of our settings are inside of Jellyfin, so regardless of what operating system you're using, you can follow along after the original install that we're going to show here on Unraid. So on our Unraid server, the first thing we're going to do is not actually install Jellyfin, but check our shares. We are using the trash guides methodology with our folder mappings and how our media sits in those folders. So if you haven't checked out our trash guides video, please do that first in order to set up all of your folders the way we are expecting here. There's a range of benefits to that, including hard linking and instant atomic moves. That's going to make things so much quicker for you when managing your media. For the most part, the media server itself really isn't too complicated. It's just looking into one folder where all of our media lives, which I can show you right now. If we go to our shares, you can see we have a share called media. And if we browse it, you'll see we have 3 folders underneath there with another folder called media. And inside we have our actual folders themselves being movies and TV. Now with that out of the way and we've got our media folder set up with media in them, we can start looking at Jellyfin. Now, luckily for me, it's already come up under the Spotlight apps here in Unraid. But if you're not seeing it, just go ahead and look it up. We do love using the Host.io containers or Hot.io containers. But for this one, I'll use the official container just so everyone can see what we're doing here with it. So when you're ready, go ahead and click Install and we'll walk through the template. All right, here's our template for Jellyfin using the official container. So as we go through, we'll start noting everything. So the network type, I'm going to leave it as host for this example. Nothing wrong with using host for a media server. If you do have your custom network set up, which we just did a video on custom networks, feel free to use that if you like. I'm just going to leave it as host for today though. All of these ports we can usually leave as default unless you have a reason to change them. If you want simplicity, just leave it as the default. If you are using those ports for some reason, Unraid will let you know, but you can also just scroll down here and check your Docker allocations and you'll see if those ports exist anywhere else, which they don't on mine. In the default container template, they had 2 locations mapped, being one for TV and one for movies. You can also then add more and more as you go along for music and the such. However, for me and the way we're using our folder structure, like I said, following our trash guides, I removed those and I just added one, and it's just called media, and it maps to media, which is our share where all of our media lives. Obviously, I'm saying media a lot. The Jellyfin publish server URL, if we're going to publish this out, you probably want to use your fully qualified domain name. I'm not going to publish it out for the purpose of this video, so I'm going to leave it at that. And if you do have an XML TV folder location, map that as well. I then expanded the advanced settings here, or the more settings, and we can leave the app data the way it is. We don't need to change that. and we don't need to change any of these variables either. We just leave them as is. That is our template. Pretty easy. Let's go ahead and hit apply. Once this installs, we can then carry on as usual. Regardless of what OS you're on, you can follow along as we set up Jellyfin. If you are interested in using Unraid, please use our referral link in the description below. It really helps us out on the channel as well as Unraid themselves, so thank you. Alright, containers installed. Let's go to our Docker tab and we'll see Jellyfin running at the top here. Looks all good to me. I might quickly just flick the auto start on. That way it will start. And I have a particular order with how I like my containers to start and stop in which order. So I'll put Jellyfin just down here behind Plex, and then we will lock it down. And then we can click on it and open the web UI. Now, again, if you're using a different OS, you simply type in the IP address you've given it and the default port, and it should bring you to this. So here we are on the quick start guide. Now we're looking at Jellyfin in 2025 now, and it's had a little bit of a makeover with the logo and the UI, so I'm pretty keen to see how it looks now. Go ahead and click next. All right, first is our main user. So I'm going to go ahead and create my main user now. All right, we've got our main user, which is myself, Psychotics, and we'll click next. And now we get to add our media. Now, let's go ahead and do that. And I'll select movies to start with. You can leave that the same. Under folders, we'll click plus. And now you'll see the media share that we mapped, right? So let's click on that. And there is our movies folder. Go ahead and click OK. Beautiful. That's our movies sorted. Keep scrolling down, see what other settings we need to change. We want to enable the library. I'm not going to worry about download language, but what we might do is set it anyway. And we'll set our region as well, being Australia. This will help with things like metadata. Do we want to use the embedded titles? Now that's going to be really important. If you are looking after the actual metadata on your files and naming them correctly, which we covered in our media automation video, then that's where you'd want to probably make sure you're matching that up. We'll enable real-time monitoring, and we can also select automatically add to collection if we want. I'm going to leave it though. I don't want to create even more metadata right now than I need to. So let's just leave that. We can also enable the automatic refresher of metadata. So if it changes over time, you can get a fresher look. I'm going to leave it as never though for this purpose. Same goes for our image, all sorts of other awesome little features that we can enable if we want. And all the explanation is there. So as it says, Trick Play is similar to chapter images, except they span the entire length of the content and are used to show a preview when scrubbing through videos. So that's that little preview you see when using the scrubbing. I'm going to leave that off because just keep in mind it will use up resources when you're enabling stuff like this. Mainly when content is actually added, it's not going to be all the time, but still, this is going to be our first startup, so I probably don't want to have all that running right now. And same goes for chapter images and things like that. I'm not going to worry about it. We'll just click OK. Great. So that's our movies share done. Let's go ahead and do TV now as well. Awesome. So we've added our two libraries. That was pretty easy. Let's go ahead and click next. Again, these are the defaults. We can change them on a per library basis like we just did, but as an overall setting, we can just leave it as Australia. And do we want remote access? So do we want to be able to access this server remote? Typically, the answer is probably going to be yes. If, however, you want to use it just locally, untick that. So you just disable that option completely and it makes it a lot more secure. Now, I usually would not recommend automatic port mapping, okay? For security reasons, I would prefer if you are going to forward a port, then you actually set the port in stone. And we have already kind of done that on the outside of the container in Docker. So we've already assigned it its port. So we can always just use a different port when we port forward on our router. Okay, pretty straightforward setup and we're complete. So go ahead and click finish. Let's sign in now with that user that we just created. Off we go. So Jellyfin is now going to search those libraries we've added and begin indexing and creating all the metadata that we require. So at this point, it would be a really good idea to take a break, go grab a cup of coffee and come back so we can continue. If you'd like to share more of your wisdom or learn from others, feel free to join our Discord server. You can find the link down in our description below, where nearly 9,000 members come and join our Discord to share their ideas and help drive the community message that we are here at IBRACORP. You can also visit our new shop, now live at shop.ibracorp.io. You can find all of our brand new merch and awesome gear here on IBRACORP's very own shop website. By purchasing IBRACORP merch, you can help support the channel, as well as pick up some pretty cool merch for you and your loved ones. We take ideas and all of our designs from our community, as well as our own, and we've tried very hard to make sure that the merch is of the highest quality possible. You can also support the channel by becoming a member of our channel here on YouTube. We really appreciate all the support we get from our community members. Thank you, and we appreciate supporting the channel. Okay, now if you're a multi-user environment, you've got some family at home, or you want to share your media server with friends, let's go ahead and look at creating users. So in the top right, we click that little user icon, and we can go ahead and go to dashboard under administration. Now this is where you're going to do all your admin for the Jellyfin server itself. So the first thing we can do is go over to users, and in the user section, we can go ahead and create users. This is psychotics. We'll set a password. We'll allow all libraries, or we can select individual libraries if we prefer. Now, unlike Plex, there's no creepy account linking. It's your server, your rules. So we can change all of these settings as we see fit for this particular user and really dial down all those particular toggles that we might want to apply. Especially if you've got children, you can really dial down some of those settings too and make it a lot easier to manage. So that's how we add users. Pretty easy, isn't it? And it gives you a lot of flexibility that unfortunately I think Plex just doesn't give you. Now let's get into some fun stuff and look at plugins. Another little difference that Plex doesn't really offer. So if we go over down to the side and we click on catalog, you'll get a whole range of various plugins that we can use. These are really awesome things that we can integrate into our server to help make things either easier for people, give us more information as an admin, or provide different ways of using the server, such as LDAP authentication. So if you have an LDAP server and you want to use users from there, we can integrate that directly into Jellyfin rather than creating separate users, really unifying our user experience as well, giving them one password that they can use across our apps. Now, some really popular ones that you might want to look at are things like the Tracked plugin or any of the anime metadata plugins as well. If you're an anime viewer or lover, you'll know that in Plex it can be a real pain sometimes getting the right information, but here in Jellyfin we can install a plugin and it will handle all that work for us, as well as our open subtitles and everything else you can imagine. So it's a really cool feature of Jellyfin that I really love, and it gives people a lot of flexibility in how they want to run their media server. Now, if you have other repositories you want to add for the plugins and you find them online, if we just go up to the top in the catalog and click on add, we can add those repositories directly as well. So it gives you even more flexibility if you find some really cool plugins out on the web that aren't officially part of the default repository. So for me, I might actually like to install Playback reporting. So let's go ahead and click on that. So it'll give you the option here to read what the plugin's about, last updates, all those sort of information, and then we'll go ahead and click install. Now, as simple as that, the plugin's installed. However, we do need to restart the server in order for the plugin to take effect. Now, something else you might like is your profile settings. So if we go up to the top right and we go to settings and we go to display, you can change a few settings in here for your user experience. So this is for yourself as your user. You can set the default display mode as well as various different themes we can choose from. So currently I've got it set to dark, but maybe you prefer purple haze. And then we also get the server dashboard theme. So I'll change that to purple haze as well and see how that looks. So that's a really nice theme. I quite like that. Now, if we come back to the dashboard, we can see our current active devices, activity by users, all the paths we have configured, any sort of alerts we need to be aware of, as well as some options to restart the server. So rather than using the Docker restart, we can also just restart it here. So if I go ahead and restart, and we'll refresh the page, click on connect, and you can see our server is already looking pretty good. It started to bring in all of our content and starting to fire up some awesome looking metadata. I actually quite like the dashboard display. We'll go back to the admin dashboard. Under general, we've done most of this stuff, right? But there's one important thing we haven't really talked about, which is transcoding. And if anybody knows anything about media servers, transcoding is one of the most important things you want to set up. So currently we don't have it enabled, right? Now Plex has that paywall. That's the feature you have to pay for, whereas in Jellyfin we can use it completely free, not worrying about it. So why don't we go back to our Docker container settings and look at getting transcoding working. Now, if you're using an Intel CPU with GPU functionality, make sure you install the Intel GPU top plugin over here. If you're using Radeon, you've got that option there as well. and there is one for NVIDIA as well. So I'll bring that up for you. And you have various different NVIDIA ones that you can go with. Here's one directly from LimeTech if you're using an NVIDIA card. Once you have those installed, come back to your Jellyfin container settings and we'll add a variable. Now I'm using Intel CPU on this server, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. We've given it a name, Intel GPU. We've given it a value of /dev/dry and add. Now one other path we are going to map is actually our location for transcoding to get stored on temporarily as the CPU is doing the transcoding. Typically you can map this to a particular drive or share, but I like to actually map it to our RAM. So we'll go ahead and add another path. Inside the container, we'll just call it /transcode, and in the host path, we'll map it to /dev/shm. We'll give it read write, and then we will add. So now we have our device mapped, and we have our transcoding folder mapped as well. Go ahead and click apply. So now that we've applied the device and the transcode folder, we can go back into our Playback transcoding. We will set the hardware acceleration down to Intel QuickSync because that's the device we're using. And we'll map it to the location we mapped into the container settings, which matches here as well, which is /dev/dry. There's a lot more information on hardware acceleration in the documentation for Jellyfin, which is really well written. If you're looking for more advanced information as well, I highly recommend joining Trash's Discord server. There are lots of people in that community that are very knowledgeable on the subject and can help you out with understanding more around transcoding and the various different formats media can come in. But it basically explains here the type of device you'd likely want to be selecting depending on the GPU you've got going. And it also explains a lot more about the various different limitations or issues you might come across depending on the format of your content. So just keep that in mind. I'll really recommend you actually read through this and have an understanding because it can really affect your experience running the server and you want to make sure you understand it to get the best out of it. So we come back to Jellyfin, we're sticking with Intel QuickSync, we've got our device mapped in here and the rest of it I'm just going to leave as default and not change anything. As I said, you need to really get into it. The only other section we will change is the transcode path. So we mapped the folder earlier in our container to /transcode, so we'll leave that the same in here, make sure it matches. And scroll down even further. Again, all looks pretty good. I'm not going to mess around with it too much. Go ahead and click save. Gives you a little warning here just to make sure we know what we're doing and to actually test it out. So go ahead and click got it. And there we go. We should have transcoding now working fine. So why don't we go ahead and test something out on our server. Let's go to the main page. We'll find some content. You got to love the UI. I think it's actually really nice how it's come out these days. The Jellyfin team have done a great job. Mind you guys, it's an open source project, so there's lots of different people that contribute to it. So if you have a way you'd like to contribute, whether it's by donations or by submitting some sort of pull request, please contribute to the project. It is a fantastic one, and that's the reason why I like to show it off on our channel here today, because it really deserves the praise that it gets when it's completely free and respects your privacy. So a big fan of Jellyfin. Please go and support the project if you can. So I'm going to go ahead and try and play something now. I've turned off the sound just to avoid any sort of issues. We can see that the buffer is going through. The content looks really sharp. It's doing some sort of fetching in the background as well. We have options for our closed captioning right here. We can add it to our favorites. We have settings options here as well, so we can change things like the quality, if we want to repeat or playback speed changes. Gives us a nice little indication on when the content's expected to finish playing. Now, while that's playing, let's go ahead and check the statistics of the server while it's running. While that content's playing, I can actually see on our Unraid server, the processor isn't being pegged. It's working as it should. It is being worked, which is what we want, but it's not sitting there pegging a particular core of the CPU, which is looking great. We can see the network connectivity is also happening, so we know that network's running well. And we can see our RAM usage go up as well. And as we're looking at the statistics, I will go ahead and click play in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we can see the CPU is firing up. It's doing its thing. I'll skip ahead into the content. Keep an eye on the RAM as well. So that's going up now too. See our CPU's trying to work for it. And on my end, the content still looks great, sharp, no buffering. It's playing perfectly fine. And then obviously once we've hit the buffer threshold of transcoding, it starts to tail back down, just like Plex works for us. So I'm very, very happy with that. You can see our RAM's going to probably sit there around the 13% mark. I'll go ahead and stop the content in 3, 2, 1. And you saw the RAM drop down to 8%. CPU calms. Everything looks good. So very happy with that. All right, we have a working Jellyfin server. It's using hardware acceleration and transcoding, and we have everything we need to get going onto our next step. So let's say you have your server running, you can watch your content, that's great, you're very happy with it, but you want your family and friends to be able to ask you for certain things and for you to go source it. Now, you can use something like a list or even rely on their text messages to send it to you. But another way we can do it is set up something called Jellyseerr. Jellyseerr allows people to request content, and up to you whether you automate that request or not. At the very least, you can have it as a central place where people can ask for things that you want to add to your server. So if we come back to our Unraid server, or wherever you're running Docker, find the container settings for Jellyseerr. You can see we actually have our own container for Jellyseerr here at IBRACORP, so I'll go ahead and click install. And it's telling us that the ports are already in use. That's because we are using Overseer, which is using the same ports, but that's fine, so we can change that. So let it take us to the page. I will put it on our custom network so that it's able to talk to all of our backend apps. Seeing as this port will be taken, I will change it to 5056. But if you're not using Overseer, you can use the default port perfectly. The app data location will go to Jellyseerr. We have a log level setting there as well. And if we want MB support, we can also turn that on as well. But since we're not using MB, I'm just going to remove that parameter. Go ahead and click apply. And we'll go back to our Docker tab and we'll see Jellyseerr started up there. Again, just being as pedantic as I am, I will move that container down to where I expect requesting apps to operate. So down at this level, go ahead and lock it. If you missed me earlier, the reason why I do it is the order of startup for containers on Unraid goes from top to bottom, and then shutdown is bottom to top. So when my server first starts, I want things in this particular order for a reason. Reverse proxy followed by our networking backend, then our media servers, then our media automation apps, and then a whole bunch of other miscellaneous kind of apps as well after that. So left click Jellyseerr and go to the web UI, and it will bring you here. Really cool startup, great looking development. So great work by the team behind Jellyseerr as well as Overseer. Obviously both are fantastic apps, and we really appreciate that there is a Jellyseerr option as well as Overseer. So again, go support both those projects. So we're not going to use it for Plex and MB. Now remember that published address that we had before, as well as our Docker containers IP. We're going to put that in here as well as the port that we set it to. By default, I left it as 8096. If you're using a URL base, add that. So go ahead and sign in as your admin. If you want to be even safer, create a specific user for Jellyseerr inside of Jellyfin, just like I showed you earlier. Okay, it wants us to create an email address, which we've just created, as well as a username and password. So we've hit sign in, and then it gives us the option to sync the library. So go ahead and do that, and you'll see that both our movies and TV libraries have been synchronized. We can run a manual scan as well, especially since it's our first time setting it up. We'll run a manual scan. Typically, you wouldn't want to do this while Jellyfin is also doing a whole bunch of work in the background, just chewing up resources. But if you've already let Jellyfin kind of set up and it's nice and flatline, then come in and set this up. Now, if you are using an external URL, make sure you put that in here, because it's going to be different, obviously, to your internal address. So if you had, say, jellyseerr.yourdomain.com and you wanted people to reach it there, that's where you would set this up. If you have a forgot password URL that you want to send people over to, perhaps you have your own kind of login portal or something, you can go ahead and set that as well. We'll click Save Changes and then Continue. Now here's where we can set up our radar and sonar services. We aren't going to do that in this video, but basically for those that are not aware, radar and sonar, movies and TV respectively, they can help source material. They can also help rename and label metadata for you. They have a whole bunch of functions and are very, very popular in the media hosting community. So I can't go too deep into each of those right now, but I recommend if you're looking for more automation, watch our media automation video, which covers both radar and sonar. So with that said, we can go ahead and click Finish Setup. What it will do is allow yourself or your users to actually come in and request stuff. So we can come in and say, oh, look, I really like this movie. When it comes out in the future, I'd love to see it someday. We can go ahead and click request. Now that request is put in, as an admin, you can see those requests right here. You can see for me, it automatically approved the request. However, you can set that up any way you like. If we go to settings and go to users, here are all the defaults that you can change. So say by default, when you add a user, we want them to be able to request, but we don't want them to auto approve. Or maybe we want it to auto approve or only auto approve for movies, for example. Then you can control things like 4K. So if we add a 4K media library, we can restrict settings separately for those, so that, you know, for example, we're happy with people automatically approving 1080 content, but we don't want 4K stuff being automatically rolled out, chewing up our server space. So we could be a bit more selective around that. You can also come back to users over here, and we can either import them from Jellyfin or we can create local ones. Now, why would we create two separate ones? We'll go ahead and click import, and you can see Mrs. Psychotics came up there. I will sync her across, and now she can sign into Jellyseerr with her Jellyfin credentials and keep it all the same once again, unifying that user experience. So that's Jellyseerr. If you want more information, check out our Overseer video or the media automation video as well. I'll leave the links down in the description for you so you can check them out. Now let's talk about remote access. There's a few dangers when it comes to remote access that you should really keep in mind. If you're going to forward ports across, that means you're leaving that port open for somebody to find and make their way into your network. It's going to be probably rare, but it's something to be conscious of when you're messing around opening up holes in your firewalls or your routers to allow things like this to communicate. There are some options for you to access Jellyfin remotely without going and opening up ports. It will make things a little bit more difficult when it comes to, say, devices that are off your network and are not necessarily a computer, so like TVs, phones. But if you can install a VPN app or client on whatever device that is, then you're going to be in a lot better position, because we can then lock down our networking settings, for example. For those, I recommend things like Tailscale, which we've covered in a video, and we are doing a new video as well. You can also use WireGuard, and if that doesn't work, you can look at things like Cloudflare tunnels or Pangolin as a reverse proxy to allow us to access this content without opening up ports. We will cover Pangolin in a future video. I think the community has really asked for it, so we'll definitely get around to that one. Now take the time to go through all the other settings inside of Jellyfin that you might find relevant. You can see all the cool options that it provides you as an admin as well, which is fantastic. Here's that plugin that we installed earlier, user Playback report. You can see we get some nice graphs, and we can break down what's happening on our server. So we get a lot of information. Obviously, I'm just one person and we've only made one count, but as you start using your server more, it's going to become more valuable. So I really love the ability to add plugins. I think the settings for transcoding have come a long way and are working really well. Our library settings are also really, really cool. We can do lots of things with those. So that's Jellyfin, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Just a quick highlight again that Jellyfin is completely free and open source. No ads. All right, no spying on your content, your media. What you're doing with your media server is your business. And that's something I really support and get behind here at IBRACORP. So please support the Jellyfin project as well as Jellyseerr projects as well. Start using it on various different apps. You can get the Jellyfin app on most smart TVs, devices, phones, everything where you'd find Plex or MB, Jellyfin will be there too. And if you can't, you can always access it via the browser and use it that way too. This is the Plex alternative that puts you in control. As we continue our brand new Unraid Zero to Hero series, we'll cover all the setup of a media server as well as the shares and all the settings associated with it. So if you don't want to go back on old videos, hang tight and watch the new one when that drops, as we cover this from start to finish. If you found this video helpful or you like the style of our content, please leave a like, subscribe and a comment. It really helps the channel out and we appreciate all of your feedback. If you're looking forward to a new idea, something you'd like us to cover, make sure you drop it in the comments so we can add it to the list. You can always join our Discord server as well as make recommendations and support the channel as you see fit. Thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next IBRACORP video.